said, oh, yes, I did not spoil the dreams of this young man. This young man was a banker. I lured him to come into politics to share in my dream. He agreed, and now he has opportunity to take over from me. What can I do as a father?
Right.
I get in the scenario. And so, given this, whatever that government will do in terms of trying to come up with expansionary policies that will make people forget the hardship that we've gone through for the past period due to the COVID and then the Ukraine war. Now we have the Israel-Palestinian, uncertainties surrounding the world. The best the government can do is to at least water down some of these hardships by, providing some form of liquidity in the market. So I see this year budget to be purely and fully expansionary in nature.
Wow.
Which will be very chaotic. The aftermath. This is what I see. That's why I don't think that we need a budget. Because there's no way that even if we decide, if we come out, we read, oh, we're going to do this, it will happen. But so let's see what will happen in the budget. Taxes wouldn't be much increased. The best or like the worst will be the same. But I am expecting to see some reduction in certain stuff in terms of the taxes, so that will, and then we will see more spending in terms of policies and things that will expand, boost spending, and then people will be a little bit better, which I don't think will be very good for us moving forward into.
We'll come back to what kind of policies might see those types of focuses. It's obviously important because it creates an opportunity in and of itself. Now, Thomas, in recent months, we've seen the Ghanaian GDP beat expectation, came in at 3.3% GDP annualized for the second or the second quarter, I think it was. We have seen the Fitch Ratings agency saying that Ghana will achieve an 87% debt to GDP ratio, which gives a little bit of room to create a bit more debt, I guess. We have seen evidence that the government is benefiting from the higher oil price and activity in the economy is picking up. Is there space for the government to actually look at the budget and take this expansionary pathway that Doc is saying is perhaps inevitable?
Well, as Doc has pointed out, this budget is going to be largely based on, as the president said, his last mission, which is to ensure that his vice is elected the next president. But a point of correction, this is the second time this situation has arisen. Mills, Rawlings, 2000 was a similar situation. And we all saw what happened there.
What did happen? I was unfortunately not here.
Expansionary fiscal policy resulted in a close to 100% depreciation of the CD, took our debt to GDP ratio to 110%. I mean,
wow.
So that's why I was
fiscal
saying that
was double figures.
We're going to have a situation not like the 2080 situation, but now that of 2000.
So it's interesting because 2000 and then
it was a disaster, which pushed us into HIPIC. However, this time around, the IMF will try to apply the brakes. The finance minister has openly declared that government expenditure would not increase for 2024. My response to that is read my lips. However, I'm going to say something very controversial here. On paper, we will not have an expansionary budget. But in practice, we'll have expansionary spending.
Right.
All right. What will happen is that we'll declare a budget that pleases the IMF, that will go ahead and miss our targets. In order to do the expansionary stuff. And a lot of the election spending actually is going to be under the table. The political parties will spend a lot of money outside official figures about money available from, I'm sorry to say, corruption in the past. Both sides will spend a lot of ill-gotten money in trying to bribe the electorate, because we have totally monetized our politics to the point of close to insanity. So there's going to be a lot of money. The Bank of Ghana will have a nightmare, because when they're trying to control money supply growth, they are going to be wondering where the money is coming from. You know, the millions that are under people's beds, for example, IKEA, Cecilia, Tapanko, will all now come out and be spent. All right,
because that's why the money was there in the first place.
Yes, which is not even money officially in circulation in the first place. Right. So it's going to be a monetary policy nightmare for the Bank of Ghana. But that is basically what will happen. We'll declare a non-expansionary budget and go ahead and engage in expansionary money supply. The issue, the idea is, you see, as I said, our politicians always, first priority is getting or retaining power.
Yeah.
All right. Now, when this happens, we'll create slippages that will anger the IMF. All right. And the next government that comes in will incur the troubles trying to get further drawdowns of the money. However, the way the politicians see it, including the candidates themselves, is that it's better to inherit a bad economy than not even to get power in the first place. So the candidates will run with it. Even Dr. Bawumia will run with it, knowing that, okay, the idea is, if I can get into power, all well, and then I will face the hurdle of IMF's anger when the time comes.
Right.
All right. But definitely you're going to say expansionary. Look, let's get something very straight. In the year 2000, we operated a very, very expansionary fiscal policy hidden under COVID. COVID was just a convenient excuse to engage in serious fiscal expansion at great cost to the state. Now we don't have that excuse, but we'll do it all the same. We'll do it all the same and worry about the repercussions when the next government takes over.
There's a fascinating fact that many don't know. I'll come back to the topic in a second. Doc, the question I'm coming to ask you is this, and perhaps you should think about it a little bit. You earlier said that the government is going to spend money to try and get everyone to forget about the hardships we've just been through. We're going to come to the question in a minute. I have a story to tell, but perhaps you could think about how easy is it to get Ghanaians to forget the pain that we've just been through, considering it was like historic levels of dislocation. Okay, there's a fascinating story when it comes to elections and election spending. And it's important for us to just kind of remember that elsewhere in the world, there are limits to spending. And here, there are literally no real rules as to how we spend. And of course, we've created a society in which everybody is very happy to collect money from the government, because it's a society in which there's a culture that desires that we collect money when we can, because there's a shortage of resources available to us all. So I always ask the question when we get to this point in my head, which is, if the culture of the society is always to expect to be given money whenever possible, because no one is ever given enough recompense for their contribution in any way, then how do we couch this language around corruption in our society? If indeed everyone takes money as part of the process, why do we use the word corruption so much?
I keep saying that, look, our leaders do not come from Mars or Venus. Our leaders are produced by the society we live in. Okay? How do you expect a corrupt society to generate honest leaders? I mean, come on, let's be realistic about this.
But how can
even the journalists that is how we live. Even the journalists, I said this thing last week, even the journalists who are complaining about corruption, if you don't give them story when they go to cover assignment, they won't run the story. And what is story? Basically, it's a bribe. So I mean, the corruption is deep in our society. It is deep. Unfortunately, it has even got to a stage now. It has become normal. It's like a rat race. Struggle to survive. Use whatever you have to get whatever you need, kind of thing. It has become normal. Corruption has been accepted as a survival platform.
Does that
even among those who are not in position.
Yeah, so Tom, I get your point, but you see, let's try to understand why we have these activities increasing. You know, we have what we call a living wage. Right. So the living wage is the minimum amount of money that the person can survive on in terms of basic necessity, like your water, your electricity, your food, and all those things. Right. The money, the genuine monies that people get are not able to meet their living wage. That is one. Two, the system does not reward meritocracy. So, if I am doing the right thing, I have all the necessary skills and all this, and I am not able to make the minimum living wage, and then there is an evidence of somebody just getting more than the the living wage, all because the person is able to engage in certain things, then of course we are all human beings, right? And like I have been saying on this show, every individual aim to maximize his or her welfare first, utility. So what a person will do is, okay, how can I be there without with all these skills? I'm not rewarded here. If I want even contracts, I need to know somebody before. If I sit down, I will die like Karl Marx. That's the reality on it. Yeah. The system is not rewarding meritocracy. There's no efficiency. So you write proposal, they will not even look at it. But you see somebody, bad proposal, but because you know somebody, that person has been given the contract, you can't sit them. So you see that now what people are doing is that people are now putting more premium on networking, social capital, than any other thing. Yeah. Rather than like equipping themselves with the right skills to do, they are not concerned about that. They are concerned about
knowing the right people,
knowing the right people, social capital, networking. And these people, yesterday I was having a discussion with some group and I told them that, you know, because of my experience, people who are able to market themselves, show all this, I see them to be empty. And they were like, why? And I said, because these people have mastered how to talk. They've mastered how to convince. They've mastered networking. But when you give them the job, they can do it. You see that? So it is the structure of the economy, how reward system is being done. That is feeding into the behavioral change of people. Because you can't tell me that Thomas has been using this simple example always, anytime you can hear that. You can't tell me that somebody who is at the port, just doing, carrying people's bag up and down, is able to make enough. And you, with the high skills and all those, you cannot even feed three
those
times
people
a day.
earn 10 times your income. You, Dr. Richard, who suffered and going to go and get a PhD in economics.
Do you get the point?
Yes.
So
secondary school leaver.
It's the system that is not rewarding merit is creating this, and it is very bad for the country.
And added to that, what he has said is exactly correct. But I will even go further and say that it's also based on the example set by our elite. Not only does corruption become necessary for us to survive and prosper, but it is actually encouraged by our system. If I need a government contract and I go with a suitcase full of money, and you need the same contract, and you go with your empty hands, who do you think is going to get the contract? You understand? Without corruption, you can't even get large incomes. And the people sit down and see, I mean, come on, let's be honest here. We see corruption in government and in the private sector every day. And the worst that happens to anybody who is caught being corrupt is a slap on the wrist. As we say in Nigeria, the only error you can make in being corrupt is when you don't steal enough to pay your way to cover your tracks. And now let me say something. I'm going to say something as this is from personal experience. I relocated to Ghana in 1996. And when I came here, it was a different Ghanaian society. it was more based on what you know rather than who you know. All right? Corruption was low. And I've come to realize that at the end of the day, it was out of the fear of one person who did his revolution, the Rawlins revolution kind of thing. I don't know whether he was corrupt or he wasn't, but he gave such harsh punishments to corruption and took a position, whether it was justified or not, of being so against corruption, ready to punish it. The people were worried about the repercussions of getting into corruption. All right? Since then, I have sat down and watched Ghana revert to its default settings, the things that led to the corruption in the first place. See, what worries me a lot is that I was coming from a country that's already there in this corruption net, all right? And what attracted me to Ghana that made me decide to relocate was that finally I've seen a country that was not like that. I've seen what it has done to the Nigerian society, and I've watched as year by year, we have. Well, some people say we have moved back to our default settings. I just say we have moved to the Nigeria kind of society, and it is so disappointing and sad.
Doc, you're an economist, so let me ask this question, and hopefully I'll get an economist answer. Because I've always had this suspicion that the key driver of this behavior in Ghana is the lack of resources and the fact that this is a resource-constrained environment, and it's resource-constrained for many reasons, often intentionally.
Not just lack of resources, how we use the ones we have.
Okay. Now, when human beings operate in a resource-constrained environment, they have a tendency, do they not, towards actions that prioritize the outcome over the pathway or the process by which they get the outcome. Because there's a desperation for that outcome that means that the potential cost of being caught is much lower than the real cost of not achieving that outcome. So this question is also important for the old question of, is it possible to change a Ghanaian's mind or get them to forget the pain that they've just been through? But if they live in an environment which is constantly resource constrained and can be therefore bought or paid for with not very much money, is it really their fault? Is it the system has corruption in it? Is it the people's fault? Can the people's behavior change, or do you have to change something in the system, for example, increasing the resource availability?
Okay, so human beings react to stimulus, right? So and I have been saying that as individuals, our main goal is to maximize our individual utility. So anything that will certify our welfare is what is our priority, right? So if we have enormous resources, then we have access to meeting our needs, then the desire to yearn for more, to be able to meet, will not be there, even though human being by nature is not satiated in nature. I mean that the more you get, the more you want. At least if we're able to meet our basic needs, any other thing can now be classified as greedy and corruption. But at the current stage, we are not able to meet our basic needs. So sometimes when I talk to my colleagues about it, I tell them that term called corruption is not corruption, because we are aiming to meet certain basic needs. So if we're able to get that basic need, and then we are still, then we have what? Corrupt people. Do you understand? But to answer your question about we react to stimulus. One, I'm not. I don't agree with the fact that we say that we are resource constrained. But see, the issue too is about inequality in the accessibility of these resources. And that is why I made mention of the fact that the system does not reward meritocracy. All right. So there is huge inequality, and this inequality is created by the fact that some people are at advantage against others, and those people with this advantage are capitalizing utilizing this advantage to still amass more at the disadvantage of people, others.
Yeah.
So what these others will do is to also find a way to be able to meet their basic needs. So there is this kind of interaction, a lot of factors come into play, right? But it's not about the resource constraints, it's about the inequality and then the lack of reward system that will be mutually beneficial to the entire population.
Please, listeners who can't see us, I'm clapping for Dr. Asaase because he has summed it up perfectly. Look, this is why I say that we have become like Nigeria and it's scary. In Nigeria, we have a saying. We say that the Nigerian general populace comprises of two sets of people. Those who have become rich through corruption and those who are waiting for their turn.
Yes.
And Ghana has virtually got to that stage now. It is very, very worrying. As you say, it's not, as Doc is saying, it's not the lack of resources. Look, guys, let's be honest. If you take the 1,000 richest members of the political class who have got money illegally from each of the two major parties and put all that money into one pool, all right, it could bring possibly 1 million or more Ghanaians out of poverty. That is the truth of the matter. The wealth inequality in Ghana has become so huge that when I was talking about the difference between Ghana when I came and the Ghana now, that is what I should have added. The fact that the level of wealth inequality now has become so stupendous that now those who have can easily manipulate those who don't have. A couple of days ago, I don't want to mention it, but when I say what happened, everybody will know who I'm talking about. A certain MP who was away for some years or so in America, claiming to be looking after somebody and having videos of dancing and co. Now wants re-election. I was going around the constituency. When you went to the market people said, go away. We don't want to see you. However, everywhere she was going, there were hundreds of people who were dancing and cheering and following her. And me and my wife were like, after that conduct, why would those people be dancing and singing and following her, whilst the market women are saying, no, we don't want to see you? The difference between the two is that the ones dancing and following have been given cash sums by her, and the market women have not. Now, at the end of the day, everybody has one vote. So if the people dancing and singing are more than the market people, what will happen in the next election?
But Doc, can't everyone give money? I mean, her opponent could also give money.
Who has more?
And hence the incentive to hoard as much cash as you can.
Once you enter once you are basing your society based on corruption, then the idea is be as corrupt as possible and get as much as possible.
So I have to posit this. It sounds crazy to say, but if you have a system in which people suffer a lot, as we have just done, does that create the scenario where it makes it easier actually to win them over, to actually make them forget?
Yes, because poverty is a disease that prevents you from thinking.
Right.
So if you, like I always say, how many rich people do you see going to church weekdays?
Very few.
You see, because they know the value of their
Time.
Their time. And how do they measure the value of their time? The money that it will come to them if they leave to go to church. You see it?
Yes.
So because of money, they don't have time for such things. All right. Poverty makes you vulnerable to a lot of things. Because you are poor, when somebody tells you that, and you're able to get a job, and somebody tells you that there's an evil spirit in your family that is scheming to let you lose your job, immediately you believe that person. Because you know that when you lose that job, you cannot feed yourself. So poverty has made you lose that sense of what thinking. As to whether what the person is saying is true or false, you are not, all that you know is how am I not? What should I do not to go back to what need? Do you get it?
Yeah.
So this is where your question, the answer to your question now comes in. Because of high level of poverty, if the system changes right now people have money in their pocket, it is easy for them to say that, after all, we don't even know the one who is coming. Let us continue with this thing, because the one who is coming may take away the money. So let's do with this one. I don't know whether you're getting that. So you see, this is what sometimes leaders capitalize on.
Counterintuitive, but it's fascinating.
Leaders capitalize on to abuse voters and all those things, because they know that when they give you the money, you have no option.
And the sad part of it is that, you see, when corruption now becomes normal, you have created a situation. You see the people you are talking about, that should they give them money so they will forget about their suffering? The average of such person, poor, distressed, financially distressed person, put him in a position to be corrupt right now. His first instinct is to be so corrupt to make sure he never goes back to that situation he was in before, and to make sure his grandchildren, even his grandchildren, will never be in that situation. So the first thing he's going to do is steal as much as possible. That is one. Two, the people he's working with are like, well, we brought you here. If you try to do goody boy, we won't trust you. Yesterday, I was doing some proposals for a friend of mine. He's actually my son's friend. He's an assemblyman in my area. Young boy, I really admire him a lot. He has tried to do real good work. When it comes to me, I help him do proposals to try and get companies in the area to do CSR for the community's benefit, to employ people in the area. So he's always coming to me with these ideas. And now it's getting time for re-election, and he was like, he doesn't even know whether he wants to go for re-election. The reason being that, I mean, we know that this assembly is not supposed to be political, but we know it is. The people in his party don't have his time. Mr. Goody Two Shoes, we don't have your time. They prefer his mates who come with deals that will enable them to enrich themselves.
Right.
So he that's trying to do work is very unpopular. The ones who are coming with corrupt deals are the ones being pushed upwards. And he's so disheartened. It took me a lot of time to try and convince him that, look, if you want to make change, it's better you stand a better chance of doing it from within than without. So stick in there. But you see, so you have that problem. On top of the fact that the sheer poverty one has gone through has made him greedy to try and get some and never go back to that situation in the first place. All right? Plus the fact that there is no, the person being corrupt knows there is no punishment for being corrupt. There are rewards, there's no downside risk, there's no punishment. So at the end of the day, what have you got? You've got a society that has now embraced corruption as a normal part of societal behavior. And that is the situation Ghana has now got to.
Beautiful.
Sorry for Ghana.
This is
And the issue keeps increasing because inequality keeps widening, and so the rich is becoming more richer, and then that of the poor poorer. You know, the current after COVID-19, we've seen how some vulnerable middle income household or individuals are now plunged into poverty lines, and then those in poverty has now moved into extreme poverty. So you see, still the issue of poverty is increasing, and then so it's still giving a source of motivation for this corruption.
So the only way to cross the bridge is either you win the lottery or you engage in corrupt behavior.
so. Well, we've set the scene. We've got 20 minutes to go. There's a bunch of Ministry of Finance guys ensconced in a secret location somewhere. You know, when they're writing the budget, they don't sit in the Ministry of Finance because there's too much distractions. So they're hidden somewhere in some hotel or some big house somewhere, trying to crack through to create a budget. You've painted a perfect picture of the priorities, electoral gain, electoral winnings, and power maintenance. You've shown the way in which Ghanaians can be encouraged to vote along with the status quo, even though they currently think they won't because of the suffering they're going through. You've also, Doc, earlier spoken about how And Tom,
Please,
that
a
we're going to have
correction, please, a correction. Let me
expansionary
a point of
policies.
correction quickly.
Yes.
Both parties will engage in such kind of spending. We don't forget that the opposition were in power for 8 years and they've not finished the money that they themselves also corruptly acquired.
It's important to note, yes.
So the richest people in the opposition party are very, very, very rich. Their money won't finish in this generation or the next.
The effects, the cycles that we go through are the same, interestingly enough. And that's enough evidence that the behaviors are the same and consistent. But we've phased it out. You've got some diligent people sitting in this room trying to figure out what to put in this budget for next week. And to do it in a way that it'll be credible and it might have some impact. Okay? So, 20 minutes. What can they focus on that adds stimulus in the way that you're suggesting, but also is constructive in terms of the structure of the economy? Is there anything that any policies?
First of all, no new projects.
Right.
All the capital expenditure will go into completing projects which are relatively close to completion, which they can finish before the elections.
Okay.
So that they can use that to try and get some funds.
Okay.
That is one. Don't forget your capital budget is going to be very small this year because it has been crowded out by recurrent expenditure all along. And the IMF is insistent on keeping the deficit low, even though we are going to exceed the targets.
So some high-profile, high-visibility projects that are relatively close to completion that won't take too much money to finish.
Yeah.
Like maybe the beach road between Accra and Tema.
Things like that.
Some motorway stuff.
Unfortunately,
some
for
bridges.
some people, not the National Cathedral.
Yeah, so I agree with what Thomas said. We should just prioritize ongoing projects, right? So that at least, one of the things that cost this country is unfinished projects.
Yes.
So because we are moving into final run of an election, a government executive period, I would suggest they will, like Thomas said, they should concentrate on projects, ongoing projects. There is in the event that they lose, so that it will not become white elephant for us. We've seen projects that when NPP came to power, they didn't continue, which was started by the NDC. So we don't want such situations. So they should at least focus on some of these projects, and also try to reduce consumption expenditure. You should try some of these policies, political policies they shouldn't bring it, especially because we are in the final leg of the executive period. We want to come out with some of these unemployment benefits in the form of some jobs, some temporary jobs and other things. Those things shouldn't be part of the budget this year. They should just concentrate on project.
You see, where they will have a conundrum is this. Everybody has complained about the size of government and they should cut it and all that. The problem now is that they are entering election year. All right, they need to cut the size of government, but don't forget that most of the government appointees anyway. This is it's like a reward for services done.
Right.
And in election year, you need their services.
Of course.
So how do you now cut them
collect
out
the
at the
opportunity.
time? This is the time you need them the most. So the efforts to reduce the size of government will be very, very limited. Will be very, very limited. It will rather be met with promises about increasing going forward. That the process for reducing the government is not a one-day thing. So it will be done that's what we'll be told. It has to be done in phases and that and that and that and that and that and that. So that if there be any reductions at all, that would have to come after they've won the election and use the political appointees who are manning everywhere after they have delivered the service in order to win the elections.
Thomas, yesterday we touched upon two stories. One, which were interesting because they indicated alternative sources of income that multilateral, bilateral, and some relatively interesting ways of raising capital that are clearly important. For example, this effort to seek $400 million in loans for the cocoa bud from the private sector value chain members such as Barry Callebaut and the other predecessors. And then, of course, we had this other story Africa Development Bank approving $102 million grant for Ghana to support economic stability and growth, designed to strengthen public finance, economic productivity, and job creation. And those two are indications of how more and more capital may come to us in the next year, and that these might be the sort of.
But a lot depends on how you're going to use them. Look, most likely that's still 400 million.
Yes.
Right. As I said yesterday, we've already taken the 700 million from JICA and the African Development Bank to restructure the cocoa industry. Very good plans. Very, very, very good plans. All right. Now, so far, they have not actually used the results to the extent that we're having to even lower the amount of money we take from our annual consortium borrowing. All right. Now, I don't have a complaint about that because sometimes you have a kind of J curve when these things happen. Things might first go down before the effects of the structural reforms take place and they go up. All right. I still have confidence in what Cocoa Board is doing. However, please rest assured, this is Ghana. When you take 400 million for structural reforms, 1 year to elections, what is going to happen is that money is going to be used for short-term fixes to please cocoa farmers, because you are talking of 800,000 households in the cocoa industry, and that is millions of votes.
Yes.
So that money is going to go into basically short-term fixes to make cocoa farmers happy before the next election. That one I can assure you.
Very good.
So you see, what I'm trying to say is that in this year up to the elections, there are going to be some distortions. Long-term things we put aside. Over the next 1 year, we're going to see short-term fixes.
Doc,
and the opposition will not make the situation any better, because they will keep on creating both real and imagined accusations, knowing that the electorate cannot tell the difference between the ones that are real and the ones that are imagined. So government has to address all of them in order not to lose votes.
Doc, there's currently a conference going on in Saudi Arabia. It's called the Saudi Arabia African Economic Conference, being held in Riyadh. Started today at the Hilton Hotel. It aims to enhance economic cooperation, trade, and investment between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Arab world, with the African nations for a more prosperous, equitable, and stable economic future. Considering the geopolitical gyrations we're seeing, the rebalancing of power, the realliance, the new alliances that are being formed with BRICS, G20, G8, etc., West versus South versus white versus brown, etc., is there an opportunity here for the Ministry of Finance and other actors to seek, in the short term, some funds from the East to help to support the economy next year? Considering we still can't go to the markets for funds, and the government's going to need to show in the budget where the funds are going to come from.
If you ask my honest opinion, given that next year is an election year, I'll just pray that we'll not get any money.
Oh.
Yes, because if we get the money, what we will use it for short-term
short-term fixes. Yeah.
You want the money in 24, not 2025, not next year.
Yes, not next year.
Right.
Because any money that will come within this next year will
be burned.
In fact, we cannot budget for
to win the election.
We cannot budget for it. We'll be engaging in projects that are useless, that cannot pay the money.
So that they can give votes and have something, so people have money in their pockets in case they have to leave power.
And then in the long run, we'll have this huge cost of debt to service. So for me, if you ask me, I will pray to the one I believe that we shouldn't get any money. Not to say that I'm just a doomsayer for it, but just because of what is going to happen next year, right? But to just come, if this thing was happening somewhere 2025 going, then I would say that, as I always say here, the way the geopolitics is changing, we should position ourselves in such a way that we can make the best from this dynamics.
And there's a second issue there that's, in fact, that will make Dr. Yusi's prayers be answered. this government, this administration is leaving at the end of a year from now, no matter what happens in the elections. The President Akufo-Addo administration is leaving. So if you are going to give Ghana money in order to be on the good side of a government, why will you give a government that's about to leave? Why wouldn't you wait until a new government comes in?
Right.
Beyond that, don't forget that the people outside are not here seeing how the political scene is. They are reading certain international analysis like the Economist Intelligence Unit, which now says that the opposition is going to win the next election. So people are going to be circumspect about lending or supporting a government that might not even, that party might not even be in power the next time around, and people will hold it against them. I mean, look, this is the way politics in Ghana was. Let me give you an example, simple example of Glo, the mobile network. In 2006, when they came into Ghana, was spending money and all that. It was the Kufuor administration, and they were quite close to the government. Everything was going fine. They were donating to the MPP and all that. And John Mahama went there as the vice presidential candidate. He went to Mike Adenuga in Nigeria and asked for some support. And Adenuga told him, look, we don't spend our money that way. On the basis that they knew, they were still sure that the MPP would retain power. And he just stopped the man. And the man came back with his tail between his legs. They now won the elections. Even if they won the elections, Adenuga knew he had made a mistake. He now took his private jet and flew to Accra to come and see Vice President Mahama then, who now got some low-level clerk to go and receive him and deal with him, to pass on the message that, we don't do our business like that, so to say. Now, the next thing that happened was that Glo was now bringing in the infrastructure. They have these like cell sites that were designed like cocoa, palm trees and blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, SEPs and for finding all kinds of faults with this and that, documentation, that. By the time they were finished with Glo, you notice that Glo just pulled back down, and basically now Glo is just a data. They just use their Glo One, this thing to supply data. They just wipe them out, So, in the run-up to election, a lot of people are very circumspect about being seen to support one side or the other. Right. And the fact is that anything you give to the government of Ghana right now will be interpreted by NDC as supporting MPP, not the Republic of Ghana.
Right.
And if the NDC now wins, they will have their knives out. And people are aware of that. And now they're reading things like the Economic Intelligence Unit's analysis and say NDC will win. So people are going to pull back and say, well, no matter who wins, whether it's MPP, whether it's NDC, it's going to be a new president anyway. So the support we'll give to Ghana, let's wait for him to come in and associate with that person. We do over the next 4 years, we'll have that person's goodwill.
Wow.
That's what's going to happen.
Wow. Okay, well, listen.
Our political environment is very interesting.
It is very fascinating. This is perhaps, we've been touching on this subject over and over again, and we've got a little bit deeper each time. But this is the closest we've got to the actual dynamics, because we're getting closer and closer to the election. So I'm really grateful for the insights, especially the past elections. It tells a lot. But that leaves us an opportunity to ask the question then, like, if you could change this political economy, the structure of it, what would you do differently to stop these dynamics? The cyclicality of the economy is very, very clearly set out by this electoral cycle and the political structure.
A total overhaul of our constitution. Total overhaul. It just needs to change our political systems, governance systems are required. The Western democracy cannot work.
Work here. Okay, so first let's answer that. You got 30 seconds. Okay, we'll have to come back to this. Why can't Western democracies work here? Why can't Western systems work? It is a case
of winner takes all. So, and because we have limited resources, everybody uses executive power to get what they can for themselves. Why the opposition is not interested in whether the government is doing well or not. The opposition actively works to bring down the existing government so they can start be the ones eating from the truth. All right. So effectively, the opposition virtually, in certain circumstances, when the incumbent government does the right thing, then effectively the opposition become enemies of the state, trying to destroy the right thing they are doing. When they do the wrong thing, of course, then they are right to criticize, and the government now because of how precise, because the government will now say that, it's just political opposition.
Right.
And so we don't have any proper arguments, reasonable arguments about what is being done right and what is being done wrong.
So not only does the structure encourage this corruption, but it also stops us from solving the real problems.
Yeah.
So the question stands, what do you change?
We should change the constitution.
What in the constitution needs to change?
Everything.
You see, everything in the
About
constitution.
The whole thing.
Yes, because
governance
it's
structures.
about the winner takes all problem.
Okay, so
The executive presidency system is not going to work here.
So this is fascinating. In our societies, we have this sort of council-led culture where there's a leader, as a chief, and his supporters or her supporters. But when someone in the society has a problem, they go to that person and they bring.
That is the system that the constitution attempted to replicate.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we did not give any power to the Council of Elders. You see, in our traditional setting, these elders who are appointed from the various family, they are heads of the they have more power than the chief.
Yes.
So they can destroy you at any time when you misbehave. So because of that power, they are able to do what? Whip the chief to do the right thing.
Blame Rawlings for that. Rawlings wanted a constitution that would give him
our constitution
autocratic powers to his democracy.
But the constitution, even though it's an attempt to replicate that system, it did not give the Council of Elders that bite, that power. So you see that everything that the Council of Elders will do is like they are just advisory, and the president is not mandated to go by that. So shall consult. The definition of consultation is vague.
You need a chamber of elders, so to say that there's like a chamber in the legislature.
So the chamber of elders who have the power to accept or reject the deliberations and decisions of the lower.
Just a chamber in the legislature. You need maybe an upper chamber or something, or the lower. But you need there's a chamber of the legislature.
Imagine we
power.
determine the various ethnic groups that we have, and then all these ethnic groups are supposed to come out. I'm just using an example. We'll come out with a leader, and that will form that chamber, and then they are supposed to crack the whip.
We have all seen the Asante Hene over these years. Do you think that if Asante Hene was involved in governance in this country, it would not improve the quality of governance in this country?
You've been listening to Asaase Business Roundtable. It's been awesome. We came to talk about the budget, and we ended up talking about the constitution and the structure of our government. Let us continue these conversations, gentlemen. I have been honored, and I am grateful to learn tonight. To our listeners, thank you for joining us this Thursday evening. We'll be back again next week. I'm sure we'll find something else interesting to talk about. I've been Kwaku Adeboli. We've been grateful for your time. Please do remember, look out for each other.